So this morning we're going to walk through DocuSign from start to finish, everything that you need to know to get your contracts and buyer brokerage agreements and everything ready and prepared. As I'm going through the training this morning, stop me with any questions. Please interrupt me. You can unmute yourself or you can ask in the chat box, and I'll periodically ask if there's any questions. Since it's you and I, let's keep this as conversational. I want to make sure that you walk away from this feeling a lot more comfortable and excited to use DocuSign.
Right, sounds good.
So I'm going to get started this morning in Command, because before we do anything in DocuSign, we need to make sure that we have our opportunity set up in Command, and that's where we're going to start. So I've gone ahead and I've created a test opportunity for this morning. So I'm going to go into my opportunities, which is the icon of the two hands shaking on the left-hand side. And then I'm going to go to all opportunities, where I can see a list of all my opportunities. Here I have my 1234 Main Street. And I have all the general information filled out about this listing and the property address. The reason I'm choosing a listing this morning is because I want to make sure that we walk through the seller's property disclosure as well as the community association disclosure, because those formats are a little bit different than the other forms, since the disclosures are meant for our clients to fill out. But we'll also talk through the purchase and sale agreement as well. So once I have all the details set up, I'm going to come to Documents. And then in the top right-hand corner, there's going to be a big blue button that says Start a Transaction. It is very important that you always click Start a Transaction from within Command. By clicking Start a Transaction, you are syncing the Command system up with DocuSign. So DocuSign will automatically create a room that is linked to Command, and that allows you to upload documents directly into Command from DocuSign, which is going to be one of the main benefits of using DocuSign. You do have the ability to start a room directly in DocuSign. If you do that, you are never able to retroactively connect that room to an opportunity in Command. So I always recommend that you click Start a Transaction in Command. You do need to have your DocuSign account and everything set up beforehand. So if you need any questions or have any questions about that or need help, let me know and we can talk through that as well. So I'm going to click on Start a Transaction. It's going to open up a new tab with me to sign into DocuSign. If you have pop-up blockers on, check your URL bar. There would be maybe like a little red box there that would say pop-up detected. Always allow for Command and DocuSign to have pop-ups. If you do not allow pop-ups, you'll never be able to get to the screen.
So for my DocuSign, I know that when I tried to log in, it was saying that I needed to go to my email for the link for the invitation, but the invitation in my email said that it expired. So how do I get a new invitation into DocuSign?
So what you'll do is in Command, let's go back here. You go up to your name in the top right-hand corner.
Mm-hmm.
Click on Settings. And then you'll come to DocuSign. And if you click Set Up Account, I think, or one of the buttons, it should allow you to resend that invitation.
Okay, got it.
So let me go back to Opportunities. All right, so I'm going to go back into DocuSign. So I'm just going to sign into DocuSign. And now it has created a room for us. Up here in the top left-hand corner, it has a name of the room, and it's 1234 Main Street Stark Potts listing. And that's the same name as my opportunity in Command. So that's how I know that the two are connected, because it has the same naming function, or same naming credentials. So everything is good to go here. It's going to drop you, when you create a new room, it's going to drop you off into the Documents tab. Your first inclination is going to be, oh, let's start adding documents. Do not do that. We're going to fill out the Details tab first. However, since this morning, this is our very first time using DocuSign, we have to confirm our NERDS ID number to get access to the GAR forms. This NERDS ID is what lets DocuSign know that we are a paid member of a board of realtors and that we are able to use the Georgia Association of Realtors copywritten forms. There are two ways to confirm your NERDS ID. We'll walk through both of them. The first is going to be right here in the Documents tab. Since we're already here, we can go ahead and confirm our NERDS ID. I'm going to click the Add button in the top right-hand corner. Then I'm going to select DocuSign Forms. And then I'm going to get this pop-up window with these two icons. I'm going to select the Realtor icon. And here it's going to ask for my 9-digit NERDS ID. I think I've only met 2 agents that actually know this number. Thankfully, there is a link right here that says Find Your NERDS ID. So you can click on that. And it's going to open up another browser window where you're able to use your last name, your email address, and or your license number to find your NERDS ID. So I'm going to use my last name and license number. Click Submit. And then here's my 9-digit NERDS ID. So I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go ahead and close this tab because I don't need it anymore. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to paste that number in. Put in your last name. You're going to want to make sure that you use the same last name that you use to register with the Atlanta Realtor Association. If for whatever reason your last name's changed in the meantime, and you use your new last name, it will not sync and will not confirm that you are a member of the association. If you need to update your name, you can always email the Atlanta Realtor Association and get that taken care of. The last thing we're going to do down here is for association is we're going to select the Georgia Association of Realtors from a very long drop-down list of associations. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom. And then I'm going to start scrolling up to the top. And then here is our Georgia.
Wow, there's a lot of associations.
Yeah. So then we'll select the Georgia Association of Realtors. And then once you have your NERDS ID, your last name, and your association, we'll click Validate. And now it will give us access to the GAR forms. If this is your very first time confirming your NERDS ID, it will ask you to accept the terms and conditions of the Georgia Association of Realtors. Click Accept, and then you'll get this screen here. And when you see this menu on the left-hand side that says GAR, that is the Georgia Association of Realtor forms. So that's how you know you have access to all those forms. I'm going to click Cancel here because I want to show you the second way of how to add your NERDS ID. So up in the top right-hand corner, if you see your picture or your initials, click on that and then select Preferences. On the left-hand side, there's a menu and I'm going to select Integrations. And then I'm going to scroll down just a little bit and here's your NERDS ID information. If it were blank, if I had not previously confirmed it, this would be blank here without a last name. I would have the ability to find my NERDS ID number right here and fill all this information in the same way that we just did a minute ago. If you ever have any issues with accessing the GAR forms, always come and check your setting or your preferences here in your integrations to make sure that your NERDS ID is still included.
And so once you put the NERDS ID in, do you have to do that every time or just the first time when you're syncing it together?
Just the first time.
Okay.
Yeah, so once you've done it, you should be good to go. That's why if, let's say you log in a couple months later and your GAR forms aren't showing up, you can just come back here to double check.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure it somehow didn't get deleted. And if it had, you can resubmit the information and give you access to the forms again.
Okay.
All right, so those are the two ways that we can confirm our NERDS ID, and we have to do that before we do anything in DocuSign. Otherwise, we won't have access to the GAR forms. So I'm going to go back to the room that we just created. I'm going to click on Dashboard really quick. Here's my property. And I'm just going to jump back into the Documents tab because this is where you'll be dropped off when you create your new room. So as I said earlier, when you're in the Documents tab, your first inclination is likely going to be, well, let's just go ahead and start adding all of my GAR forms to start filling out. Don't do that. We're going to want to go to the details tab, this first tab up here in the left-hand corner. And this is where we can fill in all of the information that we know at this point in time about this transaction, because it is the information here in the details tab that is going to auto-populate the information that goes into our GAR forms. This page is set up for two different pieces of information, and we'll walk through both those. On the left-hand side of the page, kind of like, I guess, the 3/4 of the page, is going to be information about the specific property. So you can see here, address information, year built, listing details, offer details. Now, some of this information we may not know when we first get a listing. You can always update it and fill it in as you go throughout a transaction. Scrolling back up to the top, this right-hand corner, or this right-hand column, is going to be all the information about the people involved in the transaction. So we can see here for seller one, DocuSign pulled in my client's contact information directly from command. So here's my client's name, phone number, and email address. Excuse me. Scrolling down, we have seller two. Here's her name and email address. At a minimum, you need to have your client's legal names and their email address in order to send documents to them through DocuSign for signature. Then scrolling down, we have listing agent one. And here it pulled my information directly from command. Listing agent two, if I was co-listing this with another agent, I could have his or her information filled in here. And then if I keep on scrolling, then we get to buyer one. So the reason I want to point this out is because if you're working with a buyer, you'd have to scroll down this page pretty far before you get to where you'd be able to put your buyer's name and email address, buyer two, his or her name here, and then your information as the buyer's agent. And then buyer agent two if you are co-working with this client. Any questions about the layout of the details page?
No, it makes sense. But like you said, like since they're linked together, a lot of it will already be pre-populated, or you still gotta put it in.
So the client information will be pre-populated.
Okay.
We'll have to go through and update the information for the actual listing. One thing I want to point out about information populating from command is that if you go into command and you add a new client and then immediately add or create an opportunity and then immediately create a room, your client information will not sync. Command hasn't had enough time to save that information and the server. So in that instance, you would still have to manually add your client's contact information here.
Okay.
But if they're already in your system for a while, then you'll be good to go to have that information pull over.
Okay, makes sense.
So let's get started updating this information. To do that, to edit any of the information on this page, up in the top right-hand corner, we're going to click edit. And we'll start with information on the left-hand side about the actual property. So local currency, US dollar, MLS ID. I would put this in from FMLS. I'm just going to put in some fake numbers there. Origin of lead and room status. You don't have to put anything in there if you don't want to. Address one, we'll do 1234 Main Street. We'll do Atlanta, County, Fulton, State, Georgia, postal code 30342. Property type, this is going to be residential detached. Year built, we'll do 2008. Special circumstances, there aren't any special circumstances, so we're good to go. Listing date, we'll put today's date of June 4th. Listing expiration date, let's do July 4th. Original listing amount, we'll do $415. And then I'm going to copy that. Current listing, I'm just going to put that same price in all four of these boxes. Scrolling down, offer details. We're just getting this house ready to be listed. We don't have an offer yet, so I can't fill any of this information. And the same thing with highest bid and closing details. We just don't have that information yet.
Mm-hmm.
But as you go throughout a transaction and that information becomes available, please do come into the details tab and update accordingly. And then no additional information is needed now for this property. And property details, I'm not going to go through, fill this in. It's fine.
Okay.
So now that information about the property is filled in, let's go through and double check our client's contact information. And we can make any updates if we need to. So seller 1, Tony Stark, phone number, email address, good to go. Pepper, you don't, it's going to ask for their address down here. You don't have to include it. That's really if you plan on mailing them any documents for signature, which kind of defeats the purpose of DocuSign.
DocuSign, yeah.
So seller 2, Pepper Potts, here's her email address. Scrolling down, my name, phone number, company name. You'll notice here it says Keller Williams Realty First Atlanta. I would recommend deleting Realty out of the company name. And the only reason I say that is because where the company name appears in the GAR form, if it has Realty in the name, it overlaps some of the other text. And
Okay.
Lynn has approved to say just Keller Williams First Atlanta.
Okay.
Then we have our address here, double checking this is all correct. And we're good to go. I don't have a co-listing agent, so I don't need to put anything here. Now I'm working with a seller, so I would recommend not filling in any of the information about the buyer, the actual buyer's name, and being very minimal with the information that you add here about the buyer's agent. And we'll walk through that in more detail later on.
Okay.
So I think we are good to go with all of the information here on the details tab. So I'm going to click save in the bottom right-hand corner. The room has been updated. So now that we have our documents, now that we have all of our details, let's go into the documents tab and we can start adding those GAR forms that we can start editing. So I'm going to click the documents tab. And now we want to add documents to our room. To do that, click the add button in the top right-hand corner. Click on that and then select DocuSign Forms. Then in the menu on the left-hand side, we're going to select Georgia Association of Realtors, or GAR. And now we're going to search for the forms. This system will load all 180 GAR forms. So you do need to be mindful when you are searching for these forms to make sure you get the specific one. So we're going to do the exclusive seller listing agreement. So we'll do exclusive seller. And then there's a couple different versions here. So let's make sure that we select the right one. Commercial, we're not using that one. Non-exclusive, not using that one. So we're going to use the F101 here. The next, we're going to need the seller's property disclosure. And again, make sure that we're adding the correct one here because there's a condo version, a landlord version, and a new construction version. So we'll select Exhibit 301. We also want to add the community association disclosure. So we'll add this form here. And in addition to searching the name of the actual form, you can search the form number. So if I search F201, that's going to pull up the purchase and sale agreement. And you'll notice that on the name of this form, it has a -F201. So that's form number 201. So you can search by both name and the form number. I would recommend starting to get really comfortable with the form numbers for the forms that you're going to use most often, because it will make it a lot easier to pick out the documents that you want to use. So I'm going to select that form, the purchase and sale. Up here, it says selected form, and I can click here and it's going to show me the 4 forms that I am going to add to my room. I'm going to click add selected. Give it a second to load. And now we have all 4 of these blank GAR forms in our room. Now you'll notice it's going to default, all these forms are going to default into the room docs folder. Anytime that a new document is added to your room, either as a GAR form or an upload from your computer, or you've received a signed document back from a client, they will always default into the room docs folder. However, I do recommend that you create folders to help organize your documents. Lynn and Alita are not going to look at your DocuSign room for compliance, so you can have this set up any which way that you want. But going throughout a transaction, you're going to go through a lot of GAR forms, so you want to make sure it is somewhat organized so you can keep track of them all. To add a folder to the room, up in the top right-hand corner, we're going to click on Actions and then Add Folder. And I'm just going to name this Listing Agreement. And then click Create. So now I have my separate folder and my room docs folder. Now I need to move all of my documents that are part of my listing agreement into this listing agreement folder. There are two ways to move documents from folder to folder. The first way is if you roll your mouse over one of the form icons, this radio button will appear in the top left-hand corner. So you can click on that. So I'm going to select these two forms. And then whenever you select a document, this toolbar will appear at the top of the gray area. And you can roll your mouse over the different icons and it'll tell you what it is. You can select Move, select a destination, folder, and current room. And then we'll select the listing agreement folder from the dropdown and click Move. The page will reload, and now those two forms have moved into my listing agreement folder. The second way to move documents is by rolling your mouse over the document you want to move, hold your mouse down, and then drag that document into the desired folder. And there we go. So now we have our 3 documents that are part of our listing agreement. Then I have my purchase and sale agreement down here in the room docs folder. So now that we have all of our documents set up and organized, let's go through and start actually updating the information on these GAR forms. So we will get started with the exclusive seller listing agreement. Click on it to open it up. And then you'll notice here, for some of this information, it is already preloaded. This is the information that we added in the details tab, which is why it's important that we add it there so that it can automatically be updated to these forms. It just saves us a little bit of time. But we do double check and make sure that we have all the correct information and add any missing information. So property for identification, the tax parcel ID. This wasn't included in one of the fields on the details tab, so I would need to go through and add this information manually. Legal description, I will just say attached as an exhibit here too, which is preferred. You can always reach out to our compliance partners if you need to get a legal description for a property. Scrolling down, we have list price and listing period. This is our list price that we added at $415. The commencement date for the agreement, which will be 6/4/2021. And then our ending agreement day, let's do 7/4.
I would do that all the time.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing. They updated this form not too long ago and they added these extra dates and they broke it out, so it's kind of confusing. So here we have our marketing. So I'm just going to put in FMLS, Georgia MLS, and KWLS. One thing I want to point out as we're going through this training this morning is this training is going to be about how to use DocuSign to fill in GAR forms. This is not a training on the information that you should use in these forms.
Right.
Always default to Lynn and Alita for that, and our compliance attorney partners. The marketing commencement date, so this is going to be the day that we actually list it. So I'm going to select, let's do 6/5/21, and we'll make sure that it is not backed up by more than 5 days. I'm going to scroll down. Here we have our commission. I was able to negotiate 6% for this listing, and I agreed to pay the buyer's broker 3% of the sales price. No commission agreement to cooperating broker or submission of lease protected period. I would like to negotiate 90 days. Agency and brokerage. We do not offer dual agency or sub agency here at First Atlanta. And the seller does not consent to the buyer acting as in the dual agency capacity. The Walls Group does not do that. So just make sure you select those so your clients know accordingly. Now it may be kind of confusing because it says with the following types of agency or relationships not offered by broker. So the next, the seller has the following special circumstances. No special circumstances, contract to sell the property, don't need to do anything there. And then section 8, seller does negotiate, does authorize the broker to to the extent of requested by seller in negotiating terms of or filing of this pre-printed form. So I'm going to select seller does. Then I'm going to keep on scrolling through all this text explanation of all the fields that we filled in on the first page. Then we're going to keep scrolling. And then we'll get to our brochures. So brochures are going to be additional information about specific items throughout a transaction that you can share with your clients. These are written by the Georgia Association of Realtors, and it can just be some helpful supplemental information. Select all the brochures that apply. Agency, I'm not going to send them lead-based paint because we're good. The house is from 2008. And then protect yourself. Now, select these forms. All of these brochures are in DocuSign, so you would add them the same way that you added our listing agreement and purchase and sale agreement. Our exhibits, I'm going to have our legal description. Now I'll make that exhibit A. And then scrolling down, we have special stipulations. So if there's any special stipulations that you want to add to this buyer or this listing agreement, you can add them here. All you do is just start typing in. Let me turn my caps lock off. Start typing in here, add more. The stipulations for a listing agreement are different than that on the purchase and sale agreement. This here, you may want to put something about the the seller listing price. If you guys are going to work out a timeline for any price reductions, you can go ahead and get all that information approved. You can get all that information reviewed and approved here in the listing agreement. So if you have a stipulation that says property to be listed at $415,000 if home is not under contract or negotiating a contract by 2 weeks after listing, seller agrees to let's do $10,000 price reduction. And you can just put that in there. So that way, come 2 weeks later, I don't have to reach out to my client and say, hey, can we do a $10,000 price reduction? I can just go ahead and say, hey, reminder, I'm going to reduce the price today per our stipulation in the contract, in our listing agreement.
All right. So it's already set in stone that will happen.
Yeah. Especially if you have clients that are really trying to overprice their home. Mm-hmm. This may be the best way to go about it. So that way you're not delaying, having to go back and forth and negotiate on an updated sales price to say, we'll do, this amount at this time.
All right. Okay.
Then I'm going to scroll down. Here it's going to pull in my clients' names and email addresses in the seller information. Then it's going to pull in my information, but it doesn't have everything here, which is fine. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to fill in all of the missing fields. Right. Plug in my computer really quickly. All right, phone number. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to fill in all of this information so I can avoid getting any dings from Lynn or Alita. And there we go. So now we have filled out our listing agreement. So I'm going to click save and close. You have to click save and close for the system to save all the work that you've just done. Now that we've filled out our listing agreement, let's go through and update our seller's property disclosure. So I'm going to click on this document to open it up. And it's going to be similar functionality to what we just saw. So at the top here, we can see that the property address information is automatically added because this was in the details page. We don't have an offer date yet, so we can't put an offer date in here. We'll just leave this blank. And I also recommend you leave the exhibit box blank since this will be an exhibit to a purchase and sale agreement, not an exhibit to a listing agreement.
Okay.
You can update any of the information here if you need to. And then you'll notice here for all these fields, There aren't any radio buttons, there aren't any text fields. I can't do anything here. That is correct and on purpose. As agents, we are not able to fill out the seller's property disclosure, community association disclosure, or lead-based paint disclosure, because all of that information needs to come as honest and truthfully as possible from the seller. If we fill in any of these disclosures and something is wrong, then we are on the hook for any damages or differences in costs that are missing.
Okay.
So when you pull up this document in the Documents tab and there's nowhere, nothing for you to update, just remember this is not for you to fill in, this is for your clients. Double check client's name here, perfect. And then I'm going to click Save and Close.
And when you save and close, so like this is something for the client to fill out, this will send it to them to fill out?
Not yet. To send
Not yet.
documents, we have to create an envelope, and we're going to walk through that in just a minute.
Okay.
So have our listing agreement and seller's property disclosure updated. I'm going to do the same thing for the community association disclosure. And again, we have these fields that are automatically added from the details tab. And then as I scroll down, again, all these fields are missing. I can't type anything in. I can't check any boxes. And again, because these will be mapped to our seller to fill in. So we just want to double check it, make sure there's nothing missing. But other than that, that's all we do here in the details or the documents tab for disclosures. So I'll just click Save and Close. Any questions so far about filling in the listing agreement or disclosures?
Nope.
All right. So now let's walk through the purchase and sale agreement. And traditionally, when you're working on a listing, you are likely not going to be the one to fill in the purchase and sale agreement. However, it's going to be probably one of the most commonly used documents, and if not one of the most important ones. So I want to walk through that this morning as well. So to update the purchase and sale agreement, just click on the document to open it up. That's going to be the same process as all the other documents that we've done. So we are going to start at the top and we're going to work our way down, filling in all the information that we have. So for offer date, we can set this offer date up as June 4th. It automatically adds the date here and some timestamp. So I'm going to remove that timestamp.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, so now it just shows June 4th. We have our address here. We need to add our tax ID. Legal description, exhibit here too. Scrolling down, purchase price. Let's say this buyer only wants to purchase it for $405,000. You can't put commas in the number here. I don't know why. That's how the DocuSign team mapped it. If you put a number in here and you click save, or no, excuse me, if you put a comma in the number and click save, it'll just delete the comma. So just be mindful on the number of zeros that you're adding, so you're not accidentally submitting an offer for $4 million.
Okay.
Yeah. Seller's contribution cost, we're going to ask for $5,000. Date of closing will be 6/25/21. Let's change that. Let's do 7/4/21. So it's a whole month. Possession will be at closing. Holder of earnest money will do KWFA. Earnest money, we're going to, we negotiated 1%. And that'll be within 3 days. Inspection and due diligence, however long you want to negotiate on your client's behalf for due diligence. So let's just say we'll do 10 here. Lead-based paint was not built prior to 1978. You can see here, seller's broker is Keller Williams First Atlanta. And you can see how the Keller Williams First Atlanta fits perfectly in this box. If I still had realty in the name, it would roll
Not
over.
show up. Yeah.
And it would be kind of harder to read. So I'm going to select representing seller as client. And then here I can add that the buyer's broker, we can just do Harry Norman, and they are representing their client, their buyer as a client. And there are no known material relationships to disclose. So I'm just going to put NA. Time limit of offer.
Material relationship there, meaning like if that was like someone's relative, something like that.
Yeah, so if it was like a close family member, husband, wife, kid,
Yeah.
cousin, you don't just put that in there. And it's just so you're fully transparent, because it will affect the way that co-op agent negotiates with you, knowing that there's a very personal relationship there.
Right.
Time limit of offer, usually 24 hours is pretty common, but you can put in as short or as little or as long as you'd like. So we'll do 12 p.m. on 6/5/21. So that gives them a day to review. Now you'll notice when I'm putting in the dates here, I'm always putting them in numerical format. It's very important that when you're using DocuSign that all of your dates are in this numerical format. If you actually spell out July, I guess this isn't correct. July 5, 2021, it will not save all the work that you did, and it'll give you an error message, and you'll have to fill everything back in. Just make sure all your dates are in this numeric format.
Noted.
And in this box here, you'll want to add your name really quickly since you have the copyright permissions to use this document. So I'm going to continue to scroll down. This is all the text explanation about everything on the first page. Keep scrolling. All right, so now we select which exhibits we are going to add to our document. So we are going to select the community association disclosure. I'm going to make that C. And then we have our seller's property disclosure. I'm going to make that A. And then we have our legal description. And I'm going to make this B. So now I've selected all the exhibits that I want to include with my offer. Below the exhibits, we have this very teeny tiny box for special stipulations. I do not know why, when the GAR team was putting together these documents, they made the stipulation so small. So you can only add a few here. And I'll show you a trick on how you can add more in the envelope. To add stipulations, just click in the text box and start typing away at your stipulations. Add more here. Lots more. And then you can just write as many as you want. For simplicity, I would also recommend, if you have more stipulations than what will fit here in this box, use the additional stipulations page. That'll just make it a lot easier and cleaner to read. If you do that, select this box here, and then you would need to go to add GAR forms and add in that additional special stipulations page.
Okay.
Scrolling down, we're going to get to our client's information. And you'll see here that the document includes my client's name and email address for both Tony and Pepper. I personally do not like to share my client's contact information with any co-op agent. I'm sure that 9 times out of 10, that co-op agent is going to be respectful of the relationship that I have with my clients. But I just want to prevent the situation where someone maybe tries to go around me and say, hey, we really want to do this deal, but if you cut out your agent, we can save everyone. It will be much happier, blah, blah, blah. So my first inclination would be to delete my client's email address out of this field, but don't do that. The reason you don't want to delete any pre-populated information is because if you delete that field, it will delete it out of the details tab. And then that way, when we go to send the envelope in just a moment, there won't be an email address associated with Tony Stark, so that I can't send it to anybody to sign. So I will show you in the envelope how we black that out to protect your client's privacy. Scrolling down, we want to check, make sure that all of our information is correct. So I'm going to add that I'm a member of the Atlanta board.
And we don't have to fill out the buyer side.
So I would not fill out any of the thing about the buyer's names or email addresses. Let their agent do that. But what I would do is I would fill in as much of the information about the co-op agent as possible. And you can get, I'd say, all that information out of FMLS. So the reason I say I would recommend filling in that co-op agent's information is because anything that you can do to help your offer stand out is going to be beneficial to your clients. And even something just as small as filling in these fields is going to make that co-op agent's life so much easier and save them time. So if you have the time, I recommend filling that in for them.
Got it.
So I'll just type in brokerage name. We'll just do, already has Harry Norman up there. So we're good to go. So I'm going to click save and close. All right. So now we have our 4 documents all filled out, and we are ready to send them to our clients for review and signature. The way that we send documents for signature in DocuSign is through an envelope. The way Michael New explained envelopes to me, I really like it, so I share that same analogy, is that think of an envelope in DocuSign like a manila envelope in real life. And let's say you'd gone through and you printed out all the copies of these GAR forms and you've hand-filled them in, and you were waiting to meet your client so they could sign them. You would take those forms, put them in a manila envelope, and place it on the corner of your desk until you saw them, and then you would just hand them that manila envelope and say, can you please review and sign all of these documents? Envelopes and DocuSign work that same way, as they really are just a transportation vehicle from me to my clients to review and sign.
Right.
There are 2 ways that you can make an envelope. The first way is that if you select the documents that you want to include in your envelope, you can click the radio button that appears in the top left-hand corner. And then whenever you select a document, this toolbar will appear, and then you can select Create Envelope. And that'll automatically take you into the envelope portion of DocuSign, and it will already pre-add those documents to that envelope. The second way to create an envelope is to click on the Envelopes tab. And then up in the top right-hand corner, we'll click on New. And then we'll give this an envelope name. Now, throughout a transaction, you're going to send 10, 20, 30, 50, maybe up to 100 different envelopes getting forms reviewed and signed. So I recommend that when you name this envelope, name it something that you're going to be able to remember and keep track of. So I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4. Main Street initial offer. Perfect. So now we need to add our documents. Very simple to add documents here. We have this toolbox right here, and we have 3 different options of adding documents. If I want to add the ones from my room that I'd worked on, I click Room Documents, and it's going to show me a list of all the documents that I have available to me in my room. Now today, this is very easy because I only have 4 documents in my room, so it's very easy for me to go through and select all these documents. However, when you start going through a transaction, you start having 20, 30 documents in a room, this may get overwhelming because there's going to be a lot of documents that are very similarly named, and you want to make sure that you're selecting the right form to send for signature, which is at that point, it may be better for you to select the documents in the Documents tab and then have them create a envelope versus coming through and selecting all the documents you want to send manually.
Right.
So I'm going to click Add Selected. It's going to load those 4 forms. Now you'll notice that these are all 4 GAR forms. I am currently missing the Affiliated Marketing and Wire Fraud Prevention notices from the Rawls Group. The MCA office has set those forms up to be added as templates here in the envelope. And the reason they're a template is because there aren't any fields on either one of those forms for you to fill in. It really is just something for your client to review and sign that they have received it. So
Okay.
It's set up as a template. So to add templates to your room, click on Use a Template over here in this right-hand box. Then we're going to select Shared with Me, and this is going to show me all the templates that the MCA office has shared with me. Give us a second to load. So here's the full list of documents. As you scroll through the list, you'll see here's a affiliated marketing and wire fraud, but it's titled buyer Then if I scroll down, I have a seller version of the wire fraud and property wire fraud and affiliated marketing. It is important that you select the correct version of these forms depending on which side of the transaction you are representing, because all these forms have all the signature fields pre-mapped. So if I send the buyer version by accident, there isn't going to be anywhere for my seller 1 or seller 2 to sign. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to click Add Selected. And now it's added my forms. Now, the forms are currently in alphabetical order of when they were added, but I want them in a very specific order because I want my client to review the listing agreement, then fill out the seller's property disclosure, then the community association disclosure, then the 2 marketing agreements from the office, and then lastly, then they can fill out the seller listing agreement. If you want to put them in a different order, you have to do it now and you have to do it here. This is the only place when you first initially create your envelope, and at this stage is the only place where you're able to rearrange your forms. So I'm just going to roll my mouse over the document until you get the gray field, hold my mouse down and drag it into the desired position. So we'll do that with the seller's property disclosure. And then we'll do, that's community association, so we'll do the seller's property disclosure there. Then we want affiliated marketing. And then we want wire.
So for this order that you're putting it in, like this is the order that they always go in? Just asking.
No, this is my personal preference.
Oh, okay. I was like, okay, wait.
Good. Oh, goodness. I put them, the seller listing agreement needs to go first, and then purchase and sale agreement needs to go last. Sorry. So I want them to sign the listing agreement, so I actually have the right to list it, then all the forms associated with that listing agreement, and then the purchase and sale.
Got it. And this is just basically what makes sense.
Yeah. So. And then you can put them in whatever order you want. And normally you probably will not send a purchase and sale agreement along with a listing agreement or buyer brokerage. But just for today's example, I wanted to include it in there. So now we have all of our forms added and we have them in the correct order. Any questions before we move on to the next step?
No.
All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to scroll down and we're going to add recipients to the envelope. So these recipients are going to be the people that need to review and sign the document. To add recipients, click on the Add Recipient button, and we have 3 options from the drop-down menu. Always select pre-tagged roles when it is available. I'll repeat that. Always select pre-tagged roles when available. It's so important that you select the pre-tagged roles because all of these GAR forms have signature fields, initial fields, and fields that they need to fill in that are based on our role in this room. So if I select room participants, there aren't going to be any fields for my clients to fill in because they won't be mapped to seller 1. By selecting pre-tagged roles, all of my seller 1 and seller 2's initial fields, signature fields, and fields for filling in information will be there. 9 times out of 10, if you send a document to your client and they say, hey, there's nowhere for me to sign or I can't fill this in, it's because you sent as room participants and then did not go through and manually add all of those fields. So I always recommend when pre-tagged roles is an option, always select pre-tagged roles. So I'm going to select pre-tagged roles now. And now I'm going to get this pop-up window and it's going to show me all the different roles that are on these documents. And then the documents that are associated with them. Now you'll see here, it just kind of looks like there's only one document, but it's showing all of them. It usually would show a little pop-up. There you go, a little pop-up. And this is showing a list of all the documents that have this role of buyer 1. So I'm going to, sorry.
I was saying, okay, like I get it.
All right, so I'm going to select seller 1 here from the drop-down menu. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to select Tony Stark. It's important that you're intentional about who you select as seller 1 versus seller 2, because seller one is going to be the individual that is responsible for filling in the seller's property disclosure, community association disclosure, and lead-based paint disclosure. So when you're meeting with your clients and they're like, oh yeah, send everything over, I would ask the question, who do you want to be responsible for filling in all of the fields on these disclosures? And whoever that is, whoever that person is, assign them as seller one. Seller two, we're going to set as Pepper Potts. And then listing agent, I'm going to select as myself. Now your name will probably be in here twice. It doesn't matter which one you use, just pick the one with the correct email address. It does give you the ability to add a buyer's agent here. Never send it. Well, it is my personal recommendation that you never send a document for signature to a co-op agent through DocuSign. The reason is the way the DocuSign works is that a document is not considered complete until every required party has signed it. More often than not, you're likely going to negotiate with that co-op agent on a couple terms. So that co-op agent isn't going to sign that purchase and sale agreement. But because you had added them to the envelope, it's going to think the envelope is incomplete. So you'll never have a document with any of your client signatures on it, even though they had gone through and signed it. I recommend sending documents to co-op agents as PDFs, and then they can load it into whatever e-signature platform they use, get signatures, and then send it back to you.
Okay.
So I'm going to click Add Selected. We'll give it a second to load, and it's going to load all three participants, our pre-tagged roles. All right. So now that we have our pre-tagged roles, there's a lot of information here that we want to walk through first. To the left of each one of our recipients, there's a box with the number 1 on it. That box indicates the signing order in which that person is assigned. It will default to 111, which means that everyone has the ability to sign at the same time. However, you can adjust this, and I would recommend that you do it accordingly. Knowing that Tony as seller 1 is going to be responsible for filling in the disclosures, I want Tony to receive these documents first, because I want him to be able to go in and fill them out. Then once he's finished, then I want that document, the documents to be sent to Pepper Potts as signer 2, because she can double check to make sure that all the information that Tony included is correct. And then as a listing agent, I want to be the last one to sign it, because I can also make the listing agreement binding at that time.
Got it.
Then in here we have our contacts' names and email addresses. To the right of that, we have this drop-down menu that says needs to sign. Here are a couple different permissions that you have access to. So the first one in default is going to be needs to sign. Next is going to be needs to review or needs to view. And this is going to be if it's someone that just they need to make sure they see it, double check it, maybe a productivity coach, just so they can say, okay, all the information on here looks good to go. The next one is receives a copy. So once everyone has signed, is there a specific person that needs to receive a copy? This could be something like sending it automatically to a closing attorney or a lender. But I would also recommend that before you just start randomly sending documents, make sure that person has a heads up. Hey, I'm sending over a purchase and sale agreement. I've set you up to automatically receive it from DocuSign once we have it, because then we'll be binding and good to go. The last option is specify recipient. And this doesn't really do anything, so you don't need to worry about it. I'm just going to default to leave it to needs to sign, and you'll be good to go there. To the right of that, we have another drop-down menu that says more. And here we have two options: add access authentication and add private message. Add access authentication is if your client isn't very comfortable with e-signing stuff. Maybe they're hesitant because they're afraid someone's going to break into their email and then start signing documents from DocuSign on their behalf, and then somehow they're under contract on a house and they don't even know it. So if you want to add an access authentication code, click on that, and then it's going to give you the ability to type in a code. You can type in whatever code you want. So I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I would give this code to Tony and say, hey, Tony, before you're able to sign, please be sure to type in the code 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't actually want to use this today, so I'm going to click discard. And then the next option is add a private message. So if you want to send something just to one person, this is how you do it. And for me, I want Tony, please be sure to fill out the SPD. Thank you, Nick. So this message is going to go only to Tony. Scrolling down, we have our order. It's going to be Tony, Pepper, then myself signing. Everyone needs to sign. Tony has his private message. Anything else on adding recipients to the envelope?
No, I got it. I was over there talking. I forgot this was on.
Sorry, what was that?
I was like, I think I got it. That part was pretty easy.
Yeah. I'm going to take like a quick 2-minute break to run to the restroom really quickly.
You're fine.
All right, let me mute this. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that.
You're fine.
All right, so now that we've added our contacts, put them in the correct order, we have our private message for Tony. The last thing we need to do here is to set up a message to recipients. The email subject line is going to default to please DocuSign, which I recommend that you leave in there so that way your clients know it is a DocuSign email. But I would add something on there about the property. So 1234 Main Street. I'm going to do exclusive sale listing agreement and purchase and sale agreement. Just in that way they know, and I would have given them a heads up. Hey, I'm going to be sending over these forms for you in just a minute.
Okay.
Let me delete this real fast. There we go. And then I'll just write a little message. Hi, Tony and Pepper. Please review and sign the forms. Thank you, Nick. So now we have our little message. Now we're going to click next up in the top right-hand corner. And this is going to take us into the envelope editor. And this is where we can go through and double check and make sure that all the signature fields are properly assigned. We're not missing any signature fields or initial fields, and we can add any missing fields or any missing information if we need, excuse me, if we need to. But before we start doing anything, let's walk through the layout of this page first. So starting up in the top top left-hand corner, you can see it says Tony Stark with a yellow circle next to it. This is a drop-down menu, and it has all three names of the recipients in this envelope, and we each have our own separate color. So if I select Pepper, her color is blue, and now all of these standard fields over here on the left-hand side are blue. And this is going to make it a lot more visually easy to identify who is assigned to which fields. And if I need to add a field and I need it to be assigned to myself, I can select myself from the dropdown and then add a field, and it's going to be marked purple, so I know it's going to be assigned to me.
Got it.
Below here, we have all the different standard fields. So it's going to be your signature, initial, date signed, name, email company, title, text, checkbox, all the stuff that you probably need to use. And you may need to add one or two of them throughout the process. So this is where you add them. In the middle here is going to be the preview of the document. So we can just go through, double check and make sure that all the information on the document is correct. And we can add any missing information as needed. On the far right, we have thumbnails. So this is the order of the document. So if you open up and expand a document, it's going to have thumbnails of all the documents. And this is really helpful because as you scroll through, it'll have these little tabs on all the pages where there are where there are signature fields assigned. So I know I can just click right here on page 10, and it's going to show me exactly who has signature fields. I can tell by the color who's assigned to which ones are assigned to whom. And then here's myself.
Right.
So all three of us are on here. Now, since I set myself up as the third signer, I can set myself up to make this listing agreement binding when I sign it. To do that, I'm going to add a text field. So I'm just going to click text. Then I'm going to move my mouse over here, and I'm going to place this text field right here. And then I'm going to format it to fit. And now you'll notice that this text field is purple and it's filled in. So when I click on this text field, I get a little menu over here on the right-hand side, and it's required. And by it being filled in purple, that means that it is a required field. So when I go to sign, the system is going to stop me on this at this start of this portion of the page to fill in the missing information. So I'm
This will kind of help you to remember, like,
Yeah.
that you need to put that in.
And then another really cool feature about DocuSign is that you can actually copy and paste any of these fields. So I can just copy that, click paste, and that way I can just add another text box and I don't have to reformat the whole thing.
Cool.
We have that. And then I can just add the date signed field over here, and this will automatically add the date.
Got
So
it.
now we are good to go. I'm going to continue scrolling down, and we're going to get to the seller's property disclosure. And now you'll see here are all these fields that are outlined in yellow. Yellow is assigned to Tony. So I know that this is assigned to Tony, but if I click on this field here, it doesn't have the required field, and it's only outlined, it's not filled in yellow. By it not being required, that means that the system is going to jump from required field to required field, and it's going to jump right past all of these text fields and checkboxes that Tony needs to go through and select as a part of the seller's property disclosure. One way, a little trick that you can do so the system doesn't skip over it, is that if you select the what year is the main residential dwelling constructed, select that text field and then make it required. Now it's filled in, and the system is going to stop Tony here at this field and say, you need to fill in the year of your house was built. Now it's going to be much easier for Tony to go through and check all these boxes and fill in any of the explanations as needed.
Okay, so you don't have to do that for each one.
No. And I wouldn't recommend that you do it for each one. I would just recommend that you do it for this first one, for 1A, and then let your client know, hey, once you fill in the year, go through and just scroll through the document, filling in all the information. So I'm going to scroll through and just double check to make sure everything is properly assigned to Tony and everything's outlined in yellow. Now, this is why it's so important that you select pre-tagged roles when you're creating your envelope, because had you selected room participants by accident, none of these options would be outlined in yellow. They would all be blank, and you'd have to manually add fields for each bit of information here, which would take so much time, it'd not be worth it. So everything is outlined in yellow. We're good to go. Scrolling down, now we have a signature for both Tony and Pepper and date signed. Good to go there. I'm going to continue scrolling. And now we're going to go through the community association disclosure, which is set up the same way as the seller's property disclosure, where Tony is responsible for filling in the information. I recommend doing the same trick for the community association disclosure, where you make a text field required. The only difference here is I don't know what type of association Tony's neighborhood has. So I'm not going to make any of these fields required because I don't know if it's going to have to fill anything in. But what I'll do is I'll come down here and I can make the name of the association, I can make this a required field. So the system will stop Tony here to fill in the name, and then he can more easily scroll up and see the fields right above here that he needs to fill in and add in the correct information. So I'm going to scroll through here, just make sure that all these fields are properly assigned to Tony. And again, this is another reason why it's important that you confirm with your clients who wants to be seller one, who wants to be the one to fill this information in. Because seller one is responsible for both disclosures. And then we have our seller's initials here. We have our affiliated marketing disclosure. Here are our signature and initial fields here.
These are the templates, right? The templates.
Yeah.
Okay.
So these are the two templates, and they have the pre-tagged roles set up, which is why we had to select the seller version so we'd properly have the correct roles. Then scrolling down here, now we have our wire fraud, and here's our signature fields. It's going to automatically add our clients' names and the date signed here, so good to go. Now we have our purchase and sale agreement, and we'll just do a quick once over to this information, double check, make sure it's all good. Here, it looks like I missed filling out the closing attorney. Not a big deal, I can just add that here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select myself from the drop-down menu. I'm going to add a text field. I'm going to format this to fit. Then I'm just going to type in the closing attorney. So I'm going to select Campbell and Brannon, Glen Ridge office. Now you'll notice that this text field is filled in purple, which means that it's required. But I want this information to be present on the document when Tony and Pepper review. So I'm going to select the document. I'm going to uncheck required, and then I'm going to check a read only. Now this information is going to appear when everybody signs the document. So we're good to go. Below here, we have our earnest money to be paid by, and I forgot to check which box here. So I'm just going to add a little checkbox, and we're going to make this, pull this over the check item, And then I'm just going to double click that checkbox. And now that checkbox is filled in. And I can select read only as well to make sure that that is checked when Tony and Pepper sign. So I'm going to continue to scroll down. Here are their initial fields for all that information on the first page. Keep scrolling. Keep scrolling. Here we get to all of our exhibits. So we'll just make sure that all this is correct. Here are the special stipulations that we typed earlier. Let's say when you get here to the envelope, you're like, oh, I need to add another stipulation. That's A-okay. You just click text box and you can add a text box here and then format to fit. And then you can type in stips, more stips, even more stips, lots of them. And you can see now I have it to where it this text box has a scrolling bar on the right-hand side. Well, unfortunately, PDFs aren't able to scroll. So a fun trick here, what you can do is you can come over here, uncheck required, select read only, and then come down to formatting, and you can make the font smaller. So I can make this 7-point font, and now everything fits in here. Now I will say this, do this sparingly because you're not going to win any favors with co-op agents or closing attorneys because it makes it really hard to read. But just in case, that is an option for you. I would recommend the additional stipulation page before I recommend reducing the font size.
Got it.
Scrolling down, we get to the signature page. And here's where I pointed out earlier that my client's contact information is on this form, and I don't like to share that with any co-op agent. We left it on the form because I need that email address to send for signature, but I'll show you how we can hide and protect my client's privacy. So on the far left-hand side, there's an icon of a pencil and it says pre-fill tools. I'm gonna click on that. And then the bottom option is line. So I'll click on that. And then I'm going to just drag a line right over my client's email address. Then once I add that line, the menu over here pops up and I can select the color. So I want this to be a black line and I can select the thickness. And I'm gonna make this 10-point font, 10-point. And I can just use that black bar and cover up my client's email address. I'm gonna right mouse click copy, right mouse click paste, and I'm gonna drag this over Pepper's name or Pepper's email as well. So now no one has to see my client's email addresses. They are protected and good to go. I'm gonna scroll down, double check and make sure everything else is good to go. And everything else is fine. So now we've gone through, we've double checked everything, made sure all the information is correct. We have all of our signature fields and added any missing fields as needed. If you want to see what it's going to be like for your clients to sign this, you can click recipient preview right here. And this is going to pull up a preview for what it'll be like for your clients. So I'm going to select Tony from the dropdown. And then up here in the middle, we have a display view, a mobile tablet view, so you can see it's a little bit smaller. Give it a second to load. And then we also have mobile. Now, if your clients are out and about and they're at dinner reservations or whatever, and you're like, hey, we really need to get this signed offer over to that co-op agent, they can sign on their mobile device. It's going to be difficult to read because this is what it's going to look like. But if they click start, they can press all the buttons. So just let them know that that is an option if you're under a really tight timeline.
Got it.
I'm going to click the X up here in the top right-hand corner to get out of the recipient preview. And once I'm ready to send this, I'm going to click send up in the top right-hand corner. So now we've sent it. I'm going to pull up my email so I can go through and show you how everyone signs it. So I'm going to sign as Tony, Pepper, and myself. So let me open up Gmail. And then I need to open up my, okay. Oh, perfect. This is my Gmail. So let me click inbox, and we should have, oh, wrong one. Let's go over here. Sign in. This is Tony's email. So we'll see here, we have our please DocuSign 1234 Main Street, exclusive seller listing agreement and purchase and sale. So I'm going to click on that, scroll down. Here's the message that's only to Tony. Hi, Tony, please be sure to fill out the SPD. Thank you. And then here's the message to both Tony and Pepper. So Tony's going to click review documents. It's going to load DocuSign. Going to select I agree to use electronic records and signatures, continue, and he's going to click start, and it's going to jump right to that first signature page. So required, then it's going to ask him to confirm his signature, adopt and sign. Now it's going to jump to that first required field on the seller's property disclosure where it's going to ask when the main dwelling was constructed, and I can type in 2008. And now it's so much easier for me as Tony to go through here, and I can just type in info, 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 and then just come through here. Doop, doop, doop. Now I'm just going to go through a couple of these. I don't want to spend too much time, but I just want to kind of give you an idea of what it will be like for your clients when they go to sign these documents. Doop, 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 doop. All right, I'm going to scroll through here. Then I'm going to get to this. I'm just going to check off a bunch of these. All right. Then I'm going to click next. It's going to take me to the signature field on the seller's property disclosure. We're going to sign it. That's so weird. It's going to do the same thing for the community association disclosure. It's going to jump to this required field of the name of association. So I can just type in the HOA name. And now it's much easier for me to scroll up and say, okay, we have a mandatory homeowners association, and it is currently $1,000 paid in 4 installments. And then I can scroll down and I can start filling in this information. John Smith, community management. I can just fill in all this information as needed. Now, one thing I want to point out is that your clients need to update these documents as honestly and truthfully as possible at the time that they're filling it in. Failure to include any information about the HOA, especially fees, will result in your client having to pay the difference in those unreported fees. So just make sure that they know this, so that they go through here and they are pretty diligent on what they're filling out. So we're going to sign, sign, signed, initial, sign. All right, so I'm going to scroll all the way back down to the bottom. Double check it's signed properly. Once your client has finished filling out the forms and signing, there's going to be a yellow button that says finish on the bottom here, and then one up here in the top right-hand corner. Make sure your clients click finish. So it's going to say finish. Then it's going to ask them if they want to join DocuSign. They can click no thank you. No thanks. And then they're going to get the You're All Done page. It's very important that your clients, as well as you, receive the You're All Done page, because if they don't receive the You're All Done, then the system is not going to think that they are done signing. Then the next person will not be able to sign. So it's going to hold up the whole process. So make sure you let them know, click finish, and then get the You're All Done page, and then you're good to go. So I'm going to close that. So that was for Tony. Now I'm going to go into my personal email, and I'm now have an email for Pepper. This is me signing as Pepper here. Hi, Tony and Pepper. Please review and sign. Click review documents. It's going to be the same process. I'm going to agree to use electronic records. Click continue. start, then sign, adopt and sign, sign, initial. You see, it just jumps from required field to required field.
All right, that's certainly easier because she's not Keller one.
So that's how fast it is. If you don't make any of those fields on the disclosures required, it's going to jump right past them. Now, I do really quickly want to scroll up. So I want to show you on the seller's property disclosure. Because Tony signed before Pepper, it shows all the items that that Tony filled in. So Pepper does have the ability to go through and double check all this information to make sure that it's correct and good to go. So I'm going to click finish for Pepper. No, thank you. Now we got the you're all done page. So Pepper is good to go. And then I'm going to open up my work email. And now I'm going to have an email saying, please DocuSign 1234 Main Street. So it's my turn. I'm going to click review documents. I'm going to continue, start, sign. And now I get to make this document binding. So I can go ahead and I can make this binding by typing in 12 p.m. And there we go. And now I'm all done. So I'm going to click finish. I do not want to log in. No, thank you. And then I get the you're all done page. So I know I'm good to go. One of the great things about DocuSign is that once everybody has signed all the documents, the system will automatically send out an email with all the signed copies as PDFs. By law, we are required to send documents to our clients so they have them in their records. This kind of takes out one step of that for you, which is nice. So if I click here, completed, and then here are all the documents that we just went through and signed. Now, I'd recommend that you still send these to your clients, but just knowing that DocuSign does it and it fulfills that obligation is nice to know. So now that we have all of our documents signed, I'm going to go back into DocuSign. I'm going to refresh the page because now I want it to show it's completed and has a green bar with a white check mark. So that way everything is signed. To find the signed documents, I'm going to go back into the Documents tab. And then I'm going to scroll down to the Room Docs folder because everything that is signed and gets added to the room defaults into the Room Docs folder. And now we can see we have a bunch of these documents with a green check mark in the bottom right-hand corner. These are all of our signed documents. Now I'm going to go ahead and I want to organize it so it's easier. So I'm going to select all of my listing agreement forms. And then I'm going to select move, select folder in current room, listing agreement, click move. And now we have all of our signed documents in their correct and respective folders. Any questions on anything we just walked through and signing?
One question. Can you scroll up?
Yep.
Okay. And so the ones with the green mean they signed, but it also gives you a copy of the not signed. So that's
So you'll notice that we have these green document, the ones with the green check mark icon. These are PDFs. We still have the GAR forms here. So if you ever need to make any updates to the purchase or the property disclosure or listing agreement, you could come here and still make those edits and then resend it.
Got it. Okay. I was like, what is it?
Yeah. So it's kind of confusing, but think of these blue forms as templates that you just continue to update as you need.
Okay.
So we have our signed PDFs here. Now our next step is to upload all of these into Command for compliance review. To do that, I'm going to go back into Command. Let me just close all these tabs. Go back into command. Go back into my opportunity. I'm going to go to the documents tab. And then for listed, I'm just going to come over here, and then we have our listing agreement. There's a couple different ways that you can add documents to into command. But since we created or started a room here, started a transaction here in command, I can click add a file. I can select the source of documents as DocuSign, and it's going to pull up a list of all the documents that I have in DocuSign. So I can see here's my room docs folder. And then if I come down here to my listing agreement folder, and then here is my, where's my listing agreement? Exclusive seller listing agreement -signed, and click assign. And it's going to automatically upload that document from DocuSign into command. Now today we have a, sorry, what?
I said, wow, that's great.
Yeah, so it saves some time versus you having to download that to your computer and then manually.
Yeah.
Since we have a couple files we want to attach, we can click attach multiple files. And it's going to be very similar where I'm going to select DocuSign as a source. And then for each one of the documents, I'm just going to select it from the drop-down menu. So I'm going to scroll down, and you'll see here it's just a list of the documents. We have community association fees, disclosures, related issues, -signed. So you want to make sure that you always are adding the -signed version. Do the same thing for seller's property disclosure. Seller's property disclosure signed. Our affiliated marketing. So let me scroll down. Affiliated marketing signed. And the same thing with wire fraud prevention. -signed. And then click attach. And it's going to automatically upload all of those documents to command. If for whatever reason you have a document that doesn't have one that isn't listed here, that's a-okay. This list isn't exhaustive of everything that you need to include for compliance. If you need to add something else, you can click add item. You can give this document a name. So I can just name this additional document. Select document type from the dropdown, and you just want to select the document type that is most similar, that it doesn't have to be an exact fit. It's not going to adjust getting reviewed and approved. Then I can also select documents from DocuSign again if I have any, or I could manually upload from my computer. So we'll do DocuSign. And we can do our purchase. I'm just going to do the certification document, which is just a junk document from DocuSign. Click save. And then that uploads that document and adds the additional documents. Once you've gone through and you have uploaded all of your documents that you had signed, you can come over here and click submit to MC. And this is going to submit to the Market Center for compliance review. So it'll send a note to Lynn and Alita to come in here and review all of your documents, make sure they're compliant, and let you know if there's any updates that you need to make.
Got it.
That is the training this morning. What questions do you have? What can I show you again? What can I clarify for you?
So I pretty much get it, but of course I know probably like just like when you're watching it, you're like, yeah, this makes sense. And then you actually do it, I'll probably have like questions along the way. I'm
Yep.
sure. But
Well,
I followed you pretty well though.
Yeah, always feel free to reach out with any questions. But I would recommend just kind of playing around in DocuSign because the more you play around and you're actually doing it, the easier it will become.
Yeah, I'm gonna just go ahead and send that link so I can sign in.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me this morning. And please, as always, do not hesitate to reach out. You can always call me, text me, email me. I'm always happy to help.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I know I might be the only one here, but thank
Oh,
you.
this is perfect. Thanks.
Yeah, you have a great rest of your day.
You too.